If you should awaken, I will be there when you wake from your lovely how were your dreams? And it may be.
Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Soul and Body Network. I am your host, Curt Williams Jr., author, metaphysician, spiritualist, and hermeticist. Now, I have a little grandbaby. Her name is Nas, and I didn't want to write a book that she couldn't appreciate it. I have about 3 chapters in here just for her. I have one about the angel hive, kind of took creative license with that one. And so I tried to lighten things up so they wouldn't be too serious. I didn't want to be too scientific because I'm not a scientist, but I wanted to get the attention of the science community because they already know everything I'm talking about. They're going to say something like, okay, that's a pretty good layman's interpretation of what we know. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not a scientist, but I do understand science from God's perspective, the ultimate sciences. So, chapter 2 is the gender selection. When we come back, we'll talk about why God is a he and not a she.
Chapter 2, he or she. And there came a time before time when God would select a gender. The purpose for this gender would be to maintain his newly designed universal principle of gender and correspondence. For God to alleviate or misuse this principle would break down the very fabric of space and existence, for it is the beginning of all things paramount and consequential. Like the very first foundation of all the foundations, this one must be complete and accurate. This is the foundation of God, and he will create a counterpart to be the equal to him. Equal to access of information, equal to resources and material, equal in some abilities and intellect, equal in mass and density, omnipotent with knowledge of all things. All things shall it be. However, we must consider the principle of polarity, which states that all things that are the same may not be the same to the exacting degree. Thus, the gender equivalents shall possess all things, but to a lesser degree. To God, it was important to be able to express emotions that could be understood by the counterpart, as well as to challenge and stimulate his well-being. It must maintain a level of mystery, quite a difficult task to be mysterious to something that is all-knowing. Yet, it is not impossible, if someone is indeed clever enough with the ability to misdirect that which is by nature overconfident. All 7 of the universal principles should apply to this model. How could an all-knowing being create something that is surprising even unto itself? A gender where emotional individuality could be expressed on levels that would be impressive to something that possesses everything. In time, God created a code that could create entirely new creations from its own design. This code would become known as a Fibonacci sequential. With angles and curves, geometric shapes could create a base formula for creations in a solid-state holographic matrix. From this, new things would be formed by self-replication. From this matter, the end results could be assumed. This would be the gift from God to the counterpart, as the all-knowing would intentionally ignore its preconceived outcome. The first to be applied of the 7 universal principles would be the principle of gender. Gender is of the utmost importance to this process, for without gender, life ceases to exist. All things in life must change, therefore, it is necessary for life to replenish life. Although life can be conceived in the singular, God believed that pairing would result in community. Pairs of universes, pairs of galaxies, pairs of worlds, pairs of beings. Ultimately, with gender, there would be a pair for God. Second is a universal principle of correspondence, which states, as above, so below. The above is in reference to a spiritual world. The below is in reference to a corporeal world. The principles that apply in a physical world corresponds with that of a spiritual. For example, what goes up must come down. As you sow, so shall you reap. Actions have reactions. We must then apply the universal principle of polarity. All things are the same thing, just to a greater or lesser degree. What is cold is simply that which is without a degree of heat. What is dark is that which is without light. High and low is perceived from the perspective of the observer. Masculinity and femininity is measured by the hormonal content. This is of great importance. The expression of masculinity ensures that one gender is the protector and the other the protected. One gender initiates life while the other bears life. The hormone estrogen is attributed to the feminine. In the infinite mind of God, deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, is necessary to separate and procure the procreation of species. The association of the male is also testosterone-driven by nucleic acids on a chromosomal level. There is much confusion to be had if an individual possesses equal amounts of both chromosomes. This would inevitably cause anomalies, making structured conflict resolutions difficult to resolve. Conflicting emotions would forever persist, and balanced judgment would be duly hampered. Mentalism would be the gift from God to the counterpart. This will enable the other to break down the waves of probabilities in a supernatural manner that would be consistent with the all-binding of the two spirits. This will also ensure that the rhythm and vibration is consistent between the two, measured by the cause and effect that was a necessary inspiration for the counterpart. God then called upon his ethereal council, his council of elders. Elders to whom he could call upon for their wisdom. Wisdom that could only be gained by a chosen few. or rather, whoever was around at the time. Of tremendous importance and significance was this, the gender selection. For cycles and cycles, or years and years, the feminine angels insisted upon the masculinity of a male. Their male counterpart, of course, insisting on the contrary. No decision could be made, not until God considered the job's descriptions, the duties, and expectations. Expectations not of God, but rather the expectations of God's counterpart. A counterpart to whom enormous responsibilities would be placed upon. This counterpart would be responsible for the emotional nurturement of all creation, loving and taking great care of all God's creations, and also creations of their own. Then God quickly decided, a decision based upon his omnipotent and futuristic awareness and foresight. And most importantly, his laid-back outlook on life itself. So the gender was chosen. A male. Oh, man.
Welcome back, everyone. Chapter 2, he or she. See? God is a he because his gender counterpart is a she. It could have went the other way. However, I believe that God wanted to be impressed with creation. Mother Nature is the most creative thing ever created. She had no problem whatsoever after the information was given to her on how to do things. Mother Nature had no problem bringing beauty into existence. Yeah. Why do you think women have hips and curves? Because they're beautiful. Men don't have to have all that. All we have to do is be brave and stand up and protect things. But women do bring the beauty. They bring in the beauty. And that's what Mother Nature does. She forms weather and all the things that it takes to sustain life. He gave her the Fibonacci sequence, which is a way to create big things from smaller things. A pyramid, for instance. A pyramid is nothing more but a bunch of small pyramids. A bunch of small is the big object ends up a triangle, but it starts with a billion small triangles. Everything starts with building blocks, just like that. Just like that. And God wanted to be impressed. If I had a choice to be a man or a woman, and I was thinking at it from the standpoint of what would I be most impressed by, I would be a man, because I would think that I would want to be impressed by a woman. I don't want to be impressed. I wouldn't want to be a woman depending upon a man to impress me, because he might go play football or basketball or something and hang out with the fellas, but okay, I'm joking, but anyway. When God selected the gender counterpart, it didn't mean anything political. In fact, if you interpret it well, you would understand that that gives women the advantage. The male, the protector, and the female, the protected. God knew that he's going to have to be the ultimate protector. Why would God create something that would have to protect him when he had no fears? Had nothing to fear whatsoever. So it's common sense. He's going to create something that he can protect. Principle of correspondence, as below, above. When I said that I have almost mastered the 7 Hermetic principles, the one that is the most problematic is the principle of polarity. We're going to get to that one later on too. To give you a hint, that's the principle that I call the Jesus principle. That's what made Jesus special. That's what made Jesus the ultimate human being, because the principle of polarity basically means that if you look at a thermometer, cold on this, hot on this side, well, there's no such thing or hot or cold. Heat is simply a situation that is without coolness. Coolness is a situation without heat. At what particular point does heat completely disappear and cold begins, or heat begins and cold ends? There's really never a point. What that means, as the principle of polarity, is it's only temperature. It's not hot or cold, it's just temperature. Imagine how Jesus would look at a man. He wouldn't see an evil man, or the contrary, he would see just a man. Didn't matter how you treated him, because a bad behavior and a good behavior was no different. He saw the Romans just having at it. He wasn't judging it. It was, so that's the most difficult one for me. To master that principle means you cannot distinguish between good and bad in anything. It's all just being. There's not a good car or a bad car, they're just cars. There's not a good race or a bad race, it's just race. And so, that's how spirituality works. And I believe when all the so-called races of the world understand that one's not better than the other one, it's just race, you'll be able to understand how forgiving people is the way of understanding people. I grew up, I own group homes, and in the group home business for developmentally disabled adults, well, you treat those individuals the same way you would treat yourself, in spite of the way they act. It didn't hurt that you were getting paid to do it. That would at least give you a reason. It didn't hurt, but ultimately it came down to you appreciating doing that kind of work. And I kind of like the bad ones, because the bad ones took more of a challenge. I opened up my first group home, and I had a client there that it was my second client, and she was acting up. She acted up. Now, my group home was a level 4I, which is almost the highest level. It's the highest level of the normal people without being a specialized facility. And when she got there, actually it wasn't my first, it was about my fourth client. But I had been open for about 2 weeks. And she just started doing her thing, and I panicked, and I was like, whoa, something is wrong here. Why is she acting like this? This is too much. You can't act like this. This is just, it's intolerable. What can we do? I called the phone number, the emergency phone number we had there for UCLA Psych Ward. And I called UCLA Psych. I said, hey, give me the head of the department. We've got a problem over here. So the head of the department got on the phone, and he said, what's the problem, sir? I said, well, we have an improper placement. One of my clients is beyond anything. We can't do anything with this. She's doing this and that and blah. She's just doing the most. And then he called me and said, sir, how long have you been in business? I said, well, we just opened up. We've been in business for 2 weeks, and this is just ridiculous. What can we do? He said, well, I can guarantee you the client is not the problem. The problem is you. You only been in business for 2 weeks. You're the problem. And I humbled myself very quickly, and I said, sir, can you please understand? He said, because all the clients are going to act like that when they first get there. They're just testing you. And I can tell you haven't had any clients, because you wouldn't have to be. Now go ahead and feel her out and just understand that it's a client. It's not personal. She's just trying to find out what she can get away where you're concerned. I said, oh, man. I had to humble myself, and next thing we got along fine. You know, because the principle of polarity worked very well there. Because I ended up looking at this client like, are you finished? Matter of fact, I started looking at all clients like, it's just entertainment. This is just... I had clients in my group home. It was extraordinary. One would act up, just tear things up. And you can look at some of the others like, as soon as that one gets finished, it's gonna be my turn. And you could count on, as soon as you got that one together, the other one, it was all for attention. And you really have to enjoy. I really miss that business. You really have to enjoy this because it's not good or bad, it just is. And then you realize and you understand that you're doing something that a lot of people might not want to do, and you have to enjoy it. And I did enjoy it, but now I'm going to have to enjoy trying to enlighten people on the creation of mankind, which will not be an easy task. I will run into a lot of opposition because the things in this book are not things that a lot of people are used to. But as we travel this journey, and I'll be able to explain how I derived at each chapter. The book is nonfiction. The reason what nonfiction simply means is I have at least 3 or 4 source references that are saying the same thing. So once you have like 3 or 4, then you're just not making up stuff. That's how they kind of approach it, especially if they're dealing with something that nobody knows about. But there are a couple of chapters, like I said, from my granddaughter Nas, that I embellished a little bit. Hopefully we can get her and her mom in the studio. I don't think she's going to listen to it because she's still it's still a little, well, I don't know. We'll see. She might like it. I'm hoping that she's 5 years old now. I'm hoping by the time she's 8, she'll be able to read the chapter. I have a dream that maybe she'll take my book to her school and read, the chapter of the Angel Hive to the students there and say her grandpa wrote it. So anyway, thank you, and please subscribe to this channel. The rest of the book is extraordinary. Once we get finished with the book, I will begin to teach people how to connect with their spirit. That is the greatest thing you'll ever be able to accomplish in your life. Once you make that connection, it will almost give you a supernatural type opinion of where you fit into the fabric of the universe. Thank you. Until next time, I love all of you. Subscribe. We will be back.